So we finished our satin, and now we're going to move on to the split stitch. Now, I have been using only 3 threads of my embroidery floss, but now I'm going to use all 6. It's a little bit thicker and it makes it a little bit easier to see. So I'm going to be using all 6, and I also got a larger needle with a larger eye. So again, come up from the back. And we're going to start off kind of like a running stitch. I'm going to make a little bit larger stitch than I have been making. So I'm going to go back down, pull tight as usual, and now I'm going to come back up in the middle of that stitch that I just made, and I'll be splitting the threads on this stitch. So I have 6 threads, so I should, when I come up with my needle, I should have 3 threads on the left of it and 3 threads on the right of it. Okay, so I'm coming up right in the middle and pulling tight. And I'm just going to repeat that process. So I'm going to make another slightly larger stitch, pull tight, and then come up in the middle of that with 3 threads on either side. So if you had 4 threads, you would do 2 on either side, just splitting it right down the middle. And repeat. So down and up through the middle. Down and up through the middle. So again, we're just going to repeat this until this line is done. So your stitches should start looking something like that. Alright, so let's finish that line. So now we're going to move on to couching, and for couching you're going to need 2 different colors of thread. So I have this blue one here, I have 3 threads of the embroidery floss, and the orange one here I have 6. So it works generally better if you have one that has more threads in it than the other. And I have threaded both of these with different size needles. So the first thing you're going to do is take the string that has 6 threads in it, and as usual come up from the back on the line, and then we're actually not going to use this needle anymore until the very end, so you can leave it threaded or you can unthread it for now, whatever you want. I'm going to leave it threaded. And then you're going to take the other color that only has 3 threads, and you are going to place this thread where you want it to be, the larger thread, and then take your smaller thread, come up from behind, start on one side. I'm starting on the left, come up, cross over, and go back in that same hole but on the other side of the thread. So I came up on the left, so I'm going to go down on the right, and I'm just going to reach under there and go back in that same hole. So it just makes a loop, and you're just kind of tacking that larger piece down. Okay, so we'll do that again. Try to make these the same width. And I'll come up on the left side and then come around to the right, go back in that same hole and pull tight. Alright, so try doing this as a straight line, and also try using this to make curvy lines. It's difficult to make a really nice smooth curve with this technique, but give it a try. You have to go a little bit at a time. So I might just barely move it over a little bit and start on one side and go over to the other. and then move it a little bit more and start on one side and go to the other. So you can make loops, curves, just make sure that it's really gradual. You don't want any sharp lines, sharp corners, because it's easy when you're doing this, trying to make it, see how that's starting to curve nicely? So what we don't want is like a sharp jagged line. Try that out if you want, but try to get a nice smooth curve going. So we're just going to continue with this. So start on one side and down on the other side. Alright, so play around with that line, see if you can get some good curves going, and then we'll move on. So now we're going to move on to the satin stitch, and for this one I would use an embroidery floss that has all 6 threads again. It makes it a lot easier and takes up a lot more space more quickly. So you're not going to really need a line for this, but sometimes it's nice to have a line to start out with. So you're going to come up from the back as always, and make a stitch any length you want. This can be really long, it can be really short. It doesn't matter. I'm going to do mine fairly short and pull tight. And now we're going to come up right next to that first stitch that you made. So not quite in the same hole, but right next to it. And then back down right next to this one. So the goal of this is to basically fill in an area just with thread. And that's why using 6 threads of this embroidery floss is nice, because you take up that much more space. So you're going to keep doing that, come up right next to it, and go down right next to it. Now, if you notice that at one point you go over a little bit too far, like this, and you can see a little bit of fabric, so you see that little gap there, that's okay, because you can just go right back in between and fill that space back in. Okay, and then you can just continue like usual. Alright. So I'm not doing a great job at keeping this line straight, but try to keep this bottom line and this top line as straight as you can. Unlike I'm doing, but do the best you can. Alright. Okay, so you're just going to fill that in the whole way.